Yorkshire. Machine breakers, Luddites, march by night. Their targets? The new machines being introduced in the woolen industry. Machines that are putting skilled men out of work, destroying a way of life. 13 years ago, in 1799, the combination laws made unions illegal. These men cannot openly defend their trade.
If we cannot openly present our case, then we're forced into this form of subversive and covert action. We would prefer to speak to the owners, the world and the authorities with an open face. But it is the law and the repeal of those statutes that formerly used to protect the working man that have forced us behind a mask and into the night.
To preserve their anonymity, the men are directed by number.
3:15 left, 8 and 18 right. I'm thrown out.
Only factories where the machines have been installed are attacked. Only the new machines are broken. Those responsible for law and order are apprehensive and alarmed.
Look, I've been inundated with reports of machine breaking.
Huddersfield Magistrate Joseph Radcliffe.
The country's swarming with illicit gangs. Some of them have been seen drilling under men we must presume are their leaders with sticks, pikes, hammers and muskets. There have been reports, rumours of arms caches. We are facing nothing less than revolution.
Machine breaking is organised by secret committees, illegal combinations.
Principles and purposes of our association will now
Behind these masks are croppers, the craftsmen under threat.
We're banded together to assert the rights of labour and to resist the exploitation by capital. Our methods will be persuasive argument, the united representations of our claims, and, if need be, the removal of these machines that now threaten our labour and our way of life.
To administer an illegal oath is punishable by death.
Affirm, then.
I do declare and solemnly swear that I never will reveal the names of persons who comprise this secret committee.
To swear an oath risks transportation to the
And I
colonies.
do further swear to use my best endeavours to punish by death any traitor or traitors should any rise up against us. So help me God and bless me to keep this my oath inviolate.
The ideas behind these committees come from a long, radical and secret tradition.
Kiss the book. You are now twisted in. Show more light. Unmask, brothers, and let our colleague see his friends.
The well-known Republican, John Baines.
Ordinary working people are trying to preserve the skills handed down to them through generations. And by keeping their skills, keep their freedom. They have worked hand looms and spinning wheels for centuries to suit their own needs. Their work is their way of life, and their wealth lies in their labour.
Wool is one of England's traditional and staple industries. For centuries, in cottages up and down the land, life and work has revolved around wool. Children card, prepare the wool. Women spin, men weave. Skills passed from generation to generation. But it is a world that's changing. The flying shuttle has transformed weaving. Looms now produce in a day what once took a week. In the final stage of woolen manufacture, the cloth is cropped or shaved, the fleecy surface made smooth. The huge cropping shears weigh over 60 pounds. This skill, stretching back to Roman times, was superseded only a few years ago by this machine, the cropping frame. It does mechanically what a skilled cropper does by hand. Cloth is continually run past two cropping shears driven by a water wheel. This is the machine at the heart of the dispute. A traditional cropper, George Mellor.
They're going to make us out of work. It's as simple as that and as straightforward as that. They're going to make us out of work. We think that it's a natural right for a man to earn his living at his chosen trade.
Horsefall's just using it as an excuse for getting rid of the older men. Cartwright said he's going to introduce these machines just on an experimental basis. In went the machines and out came the men.
Remember this as well, it's not just individuals who are out of work. Small cropping shops like this, many of them are going to the wall because the small man can't compete with a factory.
It's the cropping shops, incidentally, which do the best work which are going to the wall. Because very often they're the people who take most pride in the work and have made Britain famous for the export of wool throughout Europe.
These men used to be the aristocrats of England's most important trade. In Parliament, after all, the Lord Chancellor presides from the woolsack. Until 18 years ago, when the war with Napoleon began, wool was the nation's single largest export.
All right, Jack. All right.
The skill of these men can increase the value of the cloth by as much as a third. After an apprenticeship lasting 7 years, they become amongst the best paid workers in the country.
How you doing, young'un?
All right, Bob.
Good. Well, you keep hard at it, eh?
Small cropping shops may be unable to invest in the new machines, but progressive manufacturers believe the change is inevitable. Among them is William Cartwright.
To stay in the trade, I must produce cloth as cheaply and efficiently as possible. I can't take care of those whose skills are no longer required. That way I'd go out of business. There'd be no work for any of my people. I know that to stay in business, I must move with the times. Now, the croppers should know that to stay in work, they must do the same. They seem determined to obstruct progress.
The introduction of the new machines comes at a time of great distress in the economy. A series of bad harvests and the long war have brought a virtual collapse of trade. Work, even in the new mills, is scarce, times hard. So the poor, already dependent on parish relief, are joined by out-of-work croppers, whose wives and families are used to high wages.
I mean, before, we was making a good life for ourselves. I'm really working towards a, you know, have good home, and suddenly it stops. We've had to sell things. I've had to sell my wedding ring, what was my grandma's and passed down to my mother's, and what I really wanted Anne to have. We've had to sell it.
Mary Bamforth is married to John, who lost his job at Cartwright's. Anne is their elder daughter.
Well, the more they brought in, the new machines and things, the less men they needed. And
It was Cartwright, wasn't it?
aye,
That we could trust him.
I suppose he thought I was maybe a bit old for the job.
They let the older men go off first, didn't they?
But he's stronger than younger men.
Ah, well, it doesn't matter very much. I mean, they prefer the younger men because they can use the younger men on the machines, you see. They don't need the skill, do they?
But then there was, you know, that was one of the great shocks that Cartwright, you know, he's worked for him for quite a long time. And there was kind of no loyalty, was there? No. You just let them go, you know. People have been working there for a long time. And he was never friendly to us.
Strange.
He was
It
always...
just became unprofitable.
Mary used to be proud of the table she kept.
Well, at least it sticks to the spoon today, doesn't it?
Once she served meat every day. Now the family rarely gets anything more than oatmeal gruel.
No, you've got to eat it. Otherwise you'll get Jack Frost going into your chest.
How are we doing for lunch, Mary?
It'll be all right for a bit. Unless you've got each other, eh? You play jumping jack after. I mean, it's gotten worse and worse. I mean, now we just live off oats, really, don't we, and blue milk. That's all. Milk what's had the cream taken off for those what can afford butter and cheese. The likes of what we haven't seen for quite a while, I can tell you. I mean, we, at first, just didn't want to go and get the poor relief. I mean, in a way, it's harder for us, because we've been used to having stuff. I think it's easier for them that's not had much, because they know how to cope with it all. Because your pride, your dignity...
There's so many on it nowadays anyway, I mean,
You've no choice.
you just wait all day in that bloody line.
Widows and war-wounded, the old and the infirm stand in line with croppers in the queue for the poor relief. John Bamforth waits with his 2 younger children. The poor relief system used to be the envy of Europe for the fair and humane way by which parish officials dole out relief to the needy. But the recent bad harvests have forced up the price of bread to record levels, and the system is hard-pressed to cope with the increasing demands made upon it.
Morning, Thomas.
John?
I was wondering if maybe you got a bit extra this week.
Extra, John? I'm afraid not.
Well, Daniel's in fairly bad need of a new pair of shoes.
I mean, if he has shoes, another kid, he gets no food. You know how it is, John. I'm not being nasty or anything.
I understand.
Everyone gets treated the same. And it's my job to see that they do. I'm sorry, but maybe next week.
It's all right, Thomas, I understand. Thank you. Be careless.
Bye, John.
Bye-bye.
For the little ones as well, it's dreadful. I mean, suddenly they don't know why suddenly Daddy's at home and there's no food to it, and it's very hard to explain that to them without wanting them to worry, but making them realise that it's all changed. I mean, well, you can see John, I mean, he's just gone down on himself, haven't you?
And you feel... I don't know, you feel so angry. You've been kicked, you've been hurt, and you want to hurt somebody back. It's not as if I've just lost my job for a time and I can get another one. It's just that me and people like me have become obsolete.
Great change is occurring in society. The Bamforths may appear to be the victims of one machine in one trade, but their plight is part of a revolution taking place in industry, brought about by mechanical invention. The great steam engines at pit and mill are only the most dramatic evidence of this process of mechanization. New inventions, new scientific understanding, new sources of power promise a world of ever-increasing wealth.
The British economy is being transformed by a revolution in industry.
Political economist David Ricardo.
Work that was once done in the home and workshop is now being done far more efficiently in the factory. This, together with the introduction of machines that can do in a day what a man used to be able to perform in a week, means that output can increase dramatically. We could very easily be caught up in a spiral of increasing wealth.
Steam may be dramatic, but water powers the woolen industry. Here, the revolution in manufacturing has such momentum that it's occurring despite the calamitous state of trade and the European war. This is Enoch Taylor's workshop at Marsden. Once it produced tools for the agricultural trade, and it still makes the famous sledgehammers known locally as Enochs. But his iron is now forged by mechanical hammers, driven by water wheel. Today, his men make machines as well as tools. And it is here that the cropping frames are engineered. Enoch Taylor.
Our machines do a first-class job very cheaply. At £15 a piece, they more than pay for themselves in a year. But they're quite simple devices. But many of the new machines are nowhere near as complicated as might appear to the layman. See, most of the techniques we're using now have been available for years, but in the past there was simply no reason to put them to use. Now, we've now got iron bridges, like the one at Coalbrookdale, building iron ships. And we understand now a lot more about the smelting of ore and the precision metal engineering. No, we're learning all the time.
The machines are delivered by cart and canal. Mill owners are not only enthusiastic about the new machines, but believe they anticipate even greater changes in the trade.
These machines, they produce a very fine finish at a fraction of the cost of cropping by traditional methods. The jenny made the spinning wheel obsolete. These machines will do the same for cropping, and it won't end there. It won't be long before I feel that the powered machine will take over the work of the hand loom weaver. See, the woolen manufacture, which has been for generations now a cottage craft, is being turned into a great industry.
We've seen the results of these machines, and they certainly don't do the same job as we do.
Trouble with them is, they're too flat. Now, to do a proper job, you've got to have a good eye and a strong wrist, because the whole skill is to cut the nap evenly. And the more you can do that, the higher the quality you'll achieve. Now, the way it looks when them machines have done it, it's like a chap who's been shaving with a blunt knife. And another thing, in a small cropping shop, you know who you're working for. He trusts you and he respects you. Now, that's how it should be. Factories are doing away with all that. Too big.
3 more machines are installed in Cartwright's mills. Cartwright no longer employs croppers. He claims the new machines, operated by an unskilled labourer and a boy, reduce the cost of cropping by 80% or more. Cartwright believes that other employers would install them but for Luddite intimidation. Both his mill and the mill owned by William Horsfall at Otterwells are now defended night and day. Without the threat of Luddite violence, the progress of these machines would be unstoppable.
Well, the plain fact is, of course, that the process of mechanisation will be determined by the play on market forces, and not by desperate acts of violence and clandestine nocturnal meetings on the Yorkshire moors.
They are the last bastion of restrictive work practices in the woolen industry. They stand between us and progress.
These croppers are resisting change, which is inevitable, balking at progress, which in the end will benefit everybody. They should abandon their arcane craft, find themselves work more appropriate to the second decade of the 19th century.
All right.
George, Ben.
Despite a reputation for heavy drinking and hard living, the croppers are well informed. Some can even read.
Seen this about the war?
No, but I expect you'll tell me.
Take a seat. Have a listen to the read of this. With respect to the main battle which was on the 7th, the Russian accounts are so very brief that we can collect no circumstances of time and place sufficiently discriminating to compare with those of the French bulletin.
Along with other workers who feel themselves threatened by new machines, the croppers object to the way work is organised in the new factories and how that will affect the way they live.
What we're trying to preserve is the dignity of labour. You work in a factory and you're no more than a servant. Here, we're our own men. We're nobody's servant. And it's not that we're against the machines.
It's not, Ben, it's not just a question of the machine. It's a question of the dignity of the labour and how it's produced. Now, we've seen the conditions of the people working in those factories. We've seen what it's like. It's no way for anybody to work, no human being to work. At least here we have our own say over what hours we do. We like the respect that we get, of course we do, from the good job that we do. Now, you certainly won't get that in a factory.
It's a different way of life than we know. They work every day to clock. They're told what time they start. They're told what time they'll finish, if they can have a break to eat or not. Clock, clock, all day. They're trying to put us into a mechanised routine. And that's going to be set by the pace of the machines. And I'm telling you this much, I, for one, am not going to be a slave to a bloody machine for the rest of my life.
It's not just a question of that, it's the manner that it's being introduced, by people who don't give a damn. Now, these folk who are introducing, they're rich people. They've done well out of the woolen industry. These same people who've done well and built up riches, they're now using that riches to put other people out of work. Now, that isn't right.
Lining their pockets at other people's expenses and misery.
Workers arrive early at one of the new mills. Anne Bamforth, now 16, once worked in a factory.
Hard work. Long hours. It was 6 in the morning till 6 at night. It was dusty, really dusty. It made you cough all the time. There were loads of accidents. Always kids getting their hands caught in machines. I mean, you can't stop it, it just carries on whirring. It's nearly a sign that you work at mill if you've got a finger missing. And some of them had to walk nearly 4 miles to get to work. And some of the kids used to stop in, hide in the wool so they didn't have to go home. So they used to sleep there all night. I used to walk home. I'm tired when I got in. Sometimes I couldn't even bother taking my clothes off, could I? I used to just get to sleep on the floor as soon as I got in.
It seemed to me that it was a bit of a loose place morally as well. I mean, the masters seemed to think they were cock of the walk and just used to, from what I can gather, just expect the young girls to just do what they wanted, which is dreadful. I mean, we were a bit nervous about letting her go sometimes.
It's not an alternative, though. I mean, it's too easy for people to say, oh, you'll be all right, you can make some money, you can go and work in the factory. You might as well starve to death as work in the factory. I mean, all right, at least you starve to death, you'd die bloody quicker. That's no life.
Such angry sentiments are echoed at regular meetings in alehouses like the Crispin Inn, Halifax, where politics are discussed. The croppers are joined by weavers, like Henry Smith.
I mean, there's power looms over in Lancashire in the cotton mills now. If they bring them over here, it's not going to be 5,000 croppers out of work. It's going to be 250,000 weavers.
That's an army.
Yeah.
Did you hear that? 250,000. It's an army. Now, if we were to combine together with them lads, organise ourselves, we could go out and raise them mills to the ground.
Wait a minute. I talk about revolution, but I'm not talking about revolution in the next half hour. You've got to organise more than you are now. You're a small group in a small area. There's masses of men over the country who'll be prepared to join us.
They want to protest within the law, but they remember the attacks made on stocking frames in Nottingham last year.
We must do something positive.
We know.
I don't mean what those... Well, all right. I know there were frame breaking and stuff at Nottingham, but if that's what you have to do, then that's what you've got to do. At least it's action, and we need to bloody well act.
Action act. I'm talking about time to act, and now is not
time. I'm talking about time too. It takes too long.
Give us time to amalgamate better, to combine with other groups. And while we're doing it, we can use the time to do something quite useful, and that is, and this is what you're not going to like, go and see the mill owners.
Oh. John, if that suggestion you've got to make, you might as well keep it to yourself.
Billy. No, Billy, John's right. John's right. Just from the political point of view, and the way it puts us in a good light with the local people, I think that's a good idea.
Aye. We go to them.
How long will it take?
We go to see them. We put certain proposals to them. We've got to let them know what the local people think about this. They've got control and power over our lives. We've got to make them aware of what's happening here, Billy.
You think they're not listening to you? What proposals?
They may not listen to us, but we can make certain
proposals?
things, and then we have the moral upper hand. If they choose not to listen to us after that, then that be on their account, and that's what we're going to do here.
And you think if you go to the likes of Cartwright and Horsfall and ask them to give money to us out of their own pocket, they're going to listen to you? Are you really telling me that? It's because you might as well bang your head against that fireplace if that's what you think.
At least we've confronted them with our grievances. And if they choose to deny us, then we go for them. And at least they've been warned.
Well, have it your own way. But when they laugh in your face and throw you out on the street, don't say I didn't tell you.
These croppers don't need my influence. They're well informed, independent. They're truly free spirits. They take liberty and equality in with the air they breathe. These men are not idle dreamers. They're the vanguard that'll transform society, making this world a fairer and more just place in which to live.
George Mellor, William Thorpe and Ben Walker were deputised to meet two of the owners, William Horsfall and William Cartwright. By presenting the croppers' case, they risked the accusation of illegal combination.
Right, what have we got to say?
I think you know why we're here, Mr. Cartwright, Mr. Horsfall. It's about the introduction of these new machines. You know what effect they're having on the people in the valleys. If the rate of introduction of these machines continues at the current rate, 5 years' time, there's going to be no cropping industry to talk of. We're all going to be out of work. In the light of that, we'd like you to put certain things on the table.
Miller argued that the new cropping frames should be introduced gradually and new jobs found for the men the machines replaced.
And thirdly, that you will put a tax on machine-produced cloth at a nominal rate of something like 6p a yard, something like that. That then can be put in a communal pot for the good of the workers and the people in the area.
I hardly think that we could expect the owners to lobby for a tax on their own product.
Yes, well, we thought you might take that.
Wait. You're using the word we an awful lot. Do you know what I think? I don't think you're here, you three, to discuss this problem honestly, genuinely, man to man. I think you're here to deliver a load of claptrap from a mob, from an illegal combination, from a conspiracy, and you know what the peddle laugh!
Have you not...
Listen here, Horseful. You've got no excuse to make them accusations because you've got no proof. Look to your own house.
You know what the penalty is for being twisted in, don't you? Worst way, you get your neck stretched. Best way, you get deported. And if there was a magistrate or the militia within hailing distance of this place, I'd nail all three of them.
And who says we're twisted in?
I do.
Gentlemen.
How do you know? You know
Gentlemen,
not.
please.
You know not.
Man, see it in your eyes.
Please.
I think we've heard enough. Gentlemen, we came in here in the best possible intentions.
Right, well, you see what you've got. Come on. We might as well bang our head against that wall. Tosspots!
People round here say that you folk are blinkered. Well, I don't think so. I think you're stupid. I think you're pig ignorant, and this is just another exhibition of your brutish, thuggish behaviour.
Leave them, William.
It was William Hinchcliffe's mill at Leymore that was the next to be attacked.
Get in there, get the owner. Come on! Get down there, now! Number 18, get round there, guard those doors. Number 3, don't wait! I want him to see this. Hang on. Bring the owner up! Leave you, Mr. Hinchcliffe. I think you know why we're here. General Ludd sent you a lot of messages in the past. You've taken no note of them. The machines have still been installed. But tonight, we're going to show you how General Ludd operates. Number 3. Enoch made him.
Aye. And Enoch will break him.
Now, tonight General Ludd has left his visiting card. You know what's good for you. You leave those cursed machines where they are, wrecked. Yes. Do I make myself clear?
Yes, General. Sir. Yes.
Right, think yourself lucky. Now, lads.
William Hinchcliffe later described to his fellow manufacturers what had happened that night.
Because they looked like a bunch of clowns when they come in, all dressed up. I don't know what... I couldn't help myself not laughing when they came in. And if my gun hadn't been so far away from my bed, I tell you, they'd have been running off and no damage would have been done. But they're organised, this is what I'm saying. They know what they're doing, so you've got to be prepared.
I'll tell you something, Mr. Radcliffe. If they'd have done to Ottywell's mill what they did at Hinchcliffe's, I wouldn't be sat here right now. I'd be up to my bootstraps in Luddite blood.
The meeting, chaired by Magistrate Joseph Radcliffe, agreed to offer large rewards for information about the Luddites and discussed how best to defend their mills.
And I've got half me damn workforce on guard. Now, I'm down to 20% production because me men, me workforce, are guarding me damn mill.
Have you managed with your mill then, Cartwright? Think you can sustain a siege?
Yes, I have men armed inside the mill. I also have carboys of vitriol ready to pour down the stairs. I have barrels with nails and spikes protruding from them. The workers know about them, of course, and I suppose they'll go and tell everybody else what's there, and I hope this will deter them from trying to attack my property.
Oh. With all due respect, Mr. Radcliffe, all you're talking about is fighting force with force.
The owners, too, were divided about strategy.
What we should be advocating is the repeal of the combination.
The
repeal of the combination law so that we can get around a table and we can discuss like human beings, because as long as men cannot get together and organise and defend their trade, they are going to...
This is arrant nonsense, the absolute rubbish.
To violence.
This is no time now to be doing this sort of thing. Now, I tell you, you can
the only
discuss
time
it
I talk
afterwards.
to those people is behind bars.
Absolutely
justice
right.
Seems to be done because they have broken the law. They've smashed my machinery. They've smashed other people's machinery.
Why are they doing that?
They've done it.
Dangerous in this area. There's no way that we're going to have any sort of reform until the whole rebellion is put down and crushed. And I can assure you, gentlemen, that any Luddite that comes before me on the bench is going to be dealt with very, very severely indeed.
We'll hang them all, I think.
Yeah.
Like the more strident mill owners, Radcliffe's life was under threat and his home guarded. As the magistrate responsible for law and order, he believed that the government should provide professional soldiers to assist the locally raised militia.
I'm not at all convinced that London is fully aware of the gravity of the situation up here in the north. But once they are aware, I'm convinced that the garrisons will be strengthened with professional soldiery, despite the war in Spain against Bonaparte, to help us maintain proper law and order.
The Home Office in London is ultimately responsible for law and order. Its staff of 6 clerks deal with correspondence from magistrates all over the country. This is a new Office of State, created only 30 years ago in 1782. Although governments normally take the view that law and order is a local matter, the Home Secretary, Viscount Sidmouth, is fully committed to the suppression of Luddism.
We have acted expeditiously. We are vigorously pursuing prosecution of those swearing illegal oaths, an act punishable by transportation, and those administering them, a crime that now attracts the death penalty. We have revived the Watch and Ward Act, under which local magistrates can impose curfews at will, and drafted in militia from Cumberland to York. Soon, General Maitland will have some 12,000 troops under his command, which is more men than the Duke of Wellington has fighting the war in the Spanish Peninsula. This rebellion must be ringed around, isolated, and rooted out.
Ordinary people have no power because nobody represents them. They have no voice or vote. Workmen's association is called illegal combination. And a man's only way of fighting repression to join a secret society ends up in transportation to Australia. What can common people do when everything's so weighed against them? Well, frame breaking and factory burning is savage work. But what other course of action is there for desperate men other than desperate deeds?
Cartwright's mill under attack.
Wait, up, everybody up. Everybody up there, Luddites in the yard. Come on, wake up.
The bell was rung to summon the militia.
Keep your heads down, I think they're armed.
Take aim at the windows. Fire!
Okay, return fire. Get on, Will.
Right, number 3. With a hammer with it, grab to the door on the left. Number 8, number 15, down to the door on the right with the axes.
it by hand. Get the vitriol to the stairs. And the spikes. If they get through the door, let them get to the bottom of the stairs. And use the vitriol first.
Right! Get round the back!
What if you go to the back? Cover the back. Take a musket.
Cartwright's resolute defence surprised the Luddites.
Come on! Don't go now!
Several were wounded, 2 fatally.
Come on! For Christ's sake, don't look like make us look like idiots! The town door was nearly down.
Well-organised and armed attacks like this lead to speculation that Luddism is part of a wider conspiracy. Well-informed about radical politics is the editor of the Leeds Mercury, Edward Baines.
It's difficult to say. It is, after all, an illegal and secret organisation, and you have to remember that the tradition of illegal workers' organisations is very strong in this part of the country. I'd be very surprised if there were no formal links between the Lancashire, Nottinghamshire and Yorkshire Luddites, as well as other radical and Jacobin groups. But I don't think it's nationally organised.
Many owners were now moving around the county under guard. William Horsfall, however, continued to go about his regular business alone. Luddites ambushed him. A surgeon was called to the Warrener Inn, where Horsfall lay mortally wounded.
Where is he?
In the back room.
Remain, Skye. Please leave. This is no place for you.
The landlady of the Warrener Inn, Mrs. Armitage.
Well, it's Mr. Horsfall, mill owner. Well, he came riding up about 5:30, and he always stops by on his way back from Cloth Market in Huddersfield. Well, he wasn't here long. He just had his rum and water, and then he rode off. Well, it'd be about a couple of minutes later, we all heard these shots. And next thing we knew is this other gentleman who'd been up there with riding past same way brought him back here. I mean, he's in a terrible way. I mean, there's blood everywhere. He's shot in his stomach and his legs. I mean, we've been waiting 2 hours for a surgeon. We didn't think it'd go this far. I mean, breaking up machines is one thing, but to kill a man, well, that's murder, isn't it?
Horsfall's death was thought by the authorities to have turned local people against the Luddite cause.
I'd say that most people around here were right behind the lads.
That's right. Yeah.
And anyway, they're saying it were the Luddites that assassinated him, but they've got no proof. Who knows, it could have been an highwayman, anybody. And remember, that fella had a lot of enemies. Weren't it him who said he'd ride thigh-deep in Luddite blood?
Aye. Yeah.
I mean, that's asking for trouble, isn't it?
And there's nobody around here that's not behind the Luddites now. If you reckon there is, they've offered £2,000. £2,000 for anybody to inform on them. Nobody's done that yet. We're solid, everybody around here is solid.
It was now widely reported that there had been a change in Luddite strategy, from attacks on property to violence against the person.
Look,
Who says
what will
change?
they know about
hang
that?
on,
Hang on. We don't know anything about that. Lots of might make the point that we don't know anything about strategy. We're not privy to the counsels of these chaps called the Luddites. We feel it's very regrettable that it's come to this, but it just reflects the depth of sentiments that there are on these particular issues. I mean, we all feel for them. Now, the authorities have been using extensive repression from the communities around here. Now, that's violence under any other kind of name. So they call it keeping the peace.
I mean, I heard other day 3 men in Manchester were hung for stealing bread and potatoes.
And there were a woman last week who were hung for selling butter cheap. £20 of butter, sold it cheap, she got hung. That's violence.
Anna Smith.
5 men in Oldham protesting, shot dead outside Burton's Mill, Oldham.
It's a straight fight between one set of people, like the owners, they want to get rich. They want good lives, they want to get better lives, so what do? They take action which is, as far as we can see, is violent on those lads, the Luddites. And the Luddites do something about it, and you say, oh, but that's violence, that's illegal, hang the bastards. It's just force against force.
Finally, government spies succeeded in infiltrating the Luddite ranks. With the huge rewards on offer, the authorities began to receive the information they wanted. Arrests began.
Stand back fast!
quiet, woman.
John!
To the front, to the back. Get down, Robin! Bastards!
There's no question but that the government is employing spies. It is, after all, a device they've used before. However, many of the spies are doing it to gain immunity from prosecution or have been recruited from the debtor's jail. Now, apparently, they're being paid by results, so it is possible that they are embellishing their reports or even making them up. So no doubt they are providing the kind of information the authorities want to hear.
Within days, Mellor, Thorpe, Bamforth, Baines and others were all arrested. Luddite violence ebbed away. Work in the mills returned to normal. Outside York Castle, a scaffold was constructed. A special commission had found 24 men guilty of swearing illegal oaths and destroying property. 7 were sentenced to transportation, 17 to death. Mellor, Thorpe and Bamforth had been found guilty of murdering the mill owner William Horsfall. Inside the castle, prisoners awaiting death were encouraged not only to confess to the prison chaplain, but to name other Luddites and to give information about their organisation and arms caches.
This is a terrible crime you have committed, my son. You have broken the commandment, thou shalt not kill. But the Lord is merciful. The everlasting life can still be yours if you will but confess. Will you, my son, for the sake of Jesus Christ our Lord?
My own thoughts, chaplain, I ain't got long.
Yes, yes, but if you would just...
Look! Leave me to my own thoughts. I ain't got long. I don't need an old soak in a cassock to intercede between me and the Almighty. Now leave me to my own thoughts.
There are still those not yet apprehended. Their souls are doomed to eternal damnation. But you could save them if you will confess and are seen to confess.
Can you keep a secret?
Yes.
So can I.
Forever is a very long time. Salvation or damnation, it is for you to decide.
Early morning, the 8th of January, 1813. A crowd assembles to witness the execution. But there was none of the carnival mood normally associated with a public hanging. The crowd was subdued, respectful, reverent even. Clearly the condemned were not seen as common criminals. Extra militia had been drafted in to protect the scaffold. The authorities thought there might be a desperate last attempt to rescue the men.
gravel in order.
Have you any last words?
Aye. What they seek to end here today has only just begun. Our bodies may return to the dust from whence they came. But our ideas and our ideals are immortal and will live on in the hearts of those who come after us. For my part, I know some of my enemies may be here. If they be, I freely forgive them and all the world. And I hope the world will forgive me.
Let them that put me here look to their own necks.
As I was walking back home from the gallows, as I was walking all through the sad day, none could I see but my own darling husband, wrapped up in red worsted and cold as the clay. Beat the drum slowly and play the fife lowly, sound the dead march as you bear him alone. Into his grave throw a handful of roses, so brave goes my lover down to his last home. To his last home.
It's all just so wrong. All the livelihoods of generations are just breaking up. It's just an age of extremes. You've got the extreme of poverty and the extreme of prosperity walking together hand in hand. And someone's got to find the middle way, the balance between progress and just the dignity of life.
Mary Bamforth buried John. The bodies of Mellor and Thorpe were dissected. Even in death, their influence was feared. They have no grave.
They did what was right. They did what anybody would have done. They were right in what they did. It wasn't that they didn't want change, it was they didn't want change that had destroyed people's lives like it has done. Like it's destroyed our lives.
Defeated, Luddism passed into history. Within a decade, the craft of cropping had vanished. The Industrial Revolution transformed Britain into the workshop of the world, where factory life was grinding, inhuman, and impoverished. And today the word Luddite is used to denigrate those who are obstinate before progress, unreasonable before change.
Mothers and daughters hear tales of our loved ones. Remember my story and pity my fate. Remember the croppers who went to the gallows. Remember the lessons for all of our saints. Beat the drums proudly and play the fife loudly. Come sing a brave song as you fight for your lives. Over the grey scatter flowers of remembrance for the band of bold croppers cut down in their pride. Remember the croppers cut down